What if I told you there are over 30 countries on Earth where Bitcoin is trading over 1 million per coin? Let's mine deep. Okay, before you get mad at me for clickbait, it all depends on what currency you're measuring Bitcoin against. The last few months have shown extraordinary volatility, not just for Bitcoin, but for other fiat currencies around the world. And not the good type of number go up volatility. In Egypt, Bitcoin just broke over 3 million, partially because the Egyptian pound was just devalued by 35% overnight by its central bank. Egypt is the 38th largest country by GDP in the world. But due to a series of reckless fiscal policies, a shortage of incoming US dollars, and a need to appease IMF loan conditions, the country has been forced to raise interest rates and print money in order to service its mounting debts, leaving citizens of the country struggling to keep up. If this all sounds familiar, it's probably because the same situation is happening in Argentina, where the price of Bitcoin looks like this. Oh, sorry, I should probably zoom out. Yup, that's more like it. That is one Bitcoin currently trading at 57 million per coin in Argentinian peso. The potential good news for Argentina is that they just elected Javier Milei, a chainsaw-wielding, deficit-slashing libertarian, as their president to try and calm their hyperinflationary soaring debt. But only time will tell if that works. Even stable countries like Canada, Japan, and Australia, Bitcoin there is trading far past previous all-time highs from 2021. So why should you care? People often fixate on the Bitcoin price in dollars as a metric for success. But if you're not one of the 500 million people on Earth using the US dollar to measure the value of Satoshis, you already saw Bitcoin hit all-time highs months or even years ago. The whole Bitcoin world makes a living off of wild price predictions. 100K, 200K, 1 million, 5 million?
Over $1 billion, $300 million, trillion, $300 million.
But what if we're missing the point by valuing Bitcoin in any of those currencies at all? It's easy to say 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, but very few people actually treat that like reality. Because if they did, they wouldn't care what the so-called price of Bitcoin was. For people in countries whose Bitcoin chart looks like this, Bitcoin isn't a speculative asset. It's an exit ramp from a failing currency system. And if they can get their hands on it, it might just be enough over time to buy those people in hyperinflationary countries the financial freedom they need to exit entirely. So the next time you buy Bitcoin, don't think about what the future looks like at 100K or $1 million a coin. Think about what you'll do in a future where you don't measure your Bitcoin in dollars at all. Don't miss Charlene Fadirepo Backstage. Would you say that Bitcoin is better off? Well, it's better off for everybody, but developing countries need it just as much, if not more, I would say, than, first world countries.
Yeah, I mean, every country needs Bitcoin, but there are definitely some very unique and sophisticated challenges that developing countries have. I think every country in Africa is well positioned to benefit from Bitcoin from a currency perspective, from a Bitcoin mining perspective, from a sound money perspective, and even from a medium of exchange perspective. These are all the reasons why mining makes sense, or why Bitcoin makes sense in Africa, and those truths hold true in Latin America. They actually hold true in certain areas of the Middle East. Anywhere there's a country that has money that's not so sound, Bitcoin really shines.
And how did you first got introduced to Bitcoin? How was your story into coming to the Bitcoin world?
Yeah, my journey is actually really interesting. I'm a banker by trade, and so I, come kind of with the background of investments. I was running another company. It was a wealth tech company, and my clients actually started asking me about Bitcoin. And honestly, at the same time, my husband kept saying, "You should look into this Bitcoin thing." So it was kind of like all of these events kind of came together. This is around the pandemic. I had a chance to sit down and take a look, and when I saw it, I was just amazed, and I could immediately see the potential, especially for the United States, but also for Africa. So you can definitely use Bitcoin in a couple of African countries. I think that in terms of the legal tender, Africa is not there yet. But what's interesting is that, as we look at the adoption, it definitely started in West Africa. Nigeria was the country that actually, I guess, has led the adoption. But what I've been really excited about is that you're seeing adoption in Kenya, you're seeing adoption in South Africa, and even in North Africa. So, I'd like to say that 5 years from now, adoption numbers will be incredible, and there are going to be some things, and Bitcoin mining is going to be just understood as the way to provide power in Africa.
How have you seen that, especially in Africa, I feel like there's places where you don't have internet access? Does that affect the uses of Bitcoin?
It does. It does. There are places that don't have internet access. In fact, I think there's a stat, 500 million Africans don't have access to electricity. That's why Bitcoin mining is going to be such a game changer. But I will also say that there's an amazing entrepreneur. His name is Katatso Nako. He has a company called Machankura. He is actually pioneering the purchase of Bitcoin without the internet. So again, Africans have choices. If they have access to a smartphone, they can buy Bitcoin. But if they don't, if they have what's called a feature phone, they can use Machankura to also buy Bitcoin.
And the way that works is through text messages, correct?
Exactly, through text messaging. And the reason why that's really significant is that, there's whole sections of Africa, mostly East Africa, that are already used to using text messages for money, right? It's called mobile money. It's something, the M-Pesa has been, a huge push of financial inclusion in East Africa. So actually, I think that the next step is to get folks to move from M-Pesa to Bitcoin, and hopefully using Machankura to do it.